let's get on to the really exciting game of today, which was, of course, Topalov, I should say, against Kamsky. So, Toppy is a game down. Kamsky just needs to draw to qualify for the next round. This was such an exciting game. Sorry, just before I crack on with this one, Dorian Kusha is saying, from your analysis, I might conclude Mamed wasn't that prepared for Boris's opening. I think Mamedyarov just didn't have any energy left, actually. That's what I see from this opening he prepared. I think if he'd been more serious, he would have played something that was less, well, a bit more sound, actually. Because I think what he did made life too easy for Gelfand. Yes, this game ended in a draw. For those of you just arriving, it's a shock to me as well. This game ended in a draw. We'll see how in a second. Euronymous says, should we start at move 38? Well, I'd like to go through from the start, if you don't mind, because I really like the way that Topalov played in this game. First of all, he played Queen c2. Now, this looks, perhaps it has been played before, but it's a very unusual move indeed. And the idea is, well, I think just to get Kamsky out of his openings, actually. So, e4. Okay, so, knight b6. d4. Magnus Kandinsky says, what opening is this? Well, this is a kind of Grunfeld. It's a kind of Grunfeld structure. I suppose it arose from an English opening, but we've arrived at a typical Grunfeld position where white has claimed the centre and black tries to attack it. It's actually very similar to the Queen b3 variations of the Grunfeld. But if you want to give it a name, you could just call it an English opening. But it's a typical Grunfeld structure, basically. So, bishop g4. Now things start hotting up. Knight e5. Very interesting, because here, if the bishop retreats, then I'm sure that Toppy would have played castle's queenside, and this is dangerous. This is very dangerous. I think white's going to follow up with f4, and just has massive control in the centre, and after that can perhaps launch a kingside attack, maybe with g4 and f5. A lot of fun for white to play. By the way, I should say that Kamsky had already consumed quite a lot of time. Even after Topalov's move Queen c2, he used something like 45 minutes. So he was under pressure, and I think this is a very brave move, actually, but maybe under the circumstances the best move. Giving up this important bishop, but at least trying to stir things up in the centre. But I have to say, well, I'm a fan of the two bishops, and I like Toppy's position. Let me rattle through the next few moves, and well, very quickly, actually, they reached an endgame. Let me just get to that endgame. So they traded all the rooks, and we reach a typical endgame. White has the two bishops, black has a queenside majority, but there is no doubt here that white has the advantage. He controls more of the centre with these pawns, and at some moment he might try to get this dart-squared bishop into the game. You can see slight weakness on f6 as well. So ultimately this is white's aim, to try to land a blow against black's king, which Toppy succeeded in doing, as we'll see. I really like the way that Topalov played this middle game endgame. Okay, first of all he just regrouped very nicely. g3, he made sure that his centre was secure and his king was secure. h5 happened. Here, for example, white could try to lunge in with knight d5, and at first glance this perhaps looks okay, because if the knight moves, you're sort of thinking, well, d6 looks good, but actually this is a cool defense. So using the pin, and then obviously we can attack the pawn on the next turn, so black is absolutely fine here. But Toppy was very cool. First knight b5, I think this is a good move. Der Eagle is saying slow but strong moves by Toppy. Yep, I agree. Slow is okay. He's actually very patient in this game, and that's really good. He's not always patient, but he was patient here. Okay, I think that's a good move by Kamsky. I think in some ways there's a permanent problem with this knight on b5. If you hit it back, then this weakens these pawns. You know, if the pawn comes to b6, well, these are quite weak. But c4, I think is a good move to trade these off and at least try to get a bit of play, try to get the queen out. Time Bandit 2 is saying, was c5 a good decision? Later I thought a setup with c6 might be better. Okay, well, let me just backtrack a moment and we'll have a little look at that. Okay, just 1 second. So you're thinking c6 here. Yeah, okay, of course c6 is possible, but basically black suffers from a lack of space here. And for example, it might be easier for white to put a bishop or a queen on this long diagonal. So yeah, I think lack of space is a problem here. Okay, let me just go on with the game. So we reached roughly this position. Excuse me 1 second. Der Eagle is saying, why not queen c2 instead of queen d2? Or maybe we'll come to that in a second. Why not queen c2? Well, I guess you could play queen c2. I suppose the answer would be b6. And the game goes on. E5, is that interesting? Yeah, well, it's possible. It's another way of playing. Okay, I'm not quite convinced. But anyway, listen, I think the way that Topalov played is excellent, actually. So, okay, let's crack on with the game and get to the critical position, because I can tell you it is very, very complicated, and well, actually quite mind-blowing. I think I'm going to struggle with some of the analysis later. Let's get to the critical moment. So, white is trying to get the bishop onto this diagonal. This is obviously very sensitive indeed. And Kamsky is fighting to get the queens off. If he can do that, then I think he will have some chances to draw. Reasonable chances to attack this pawn. So queen c1, obviously keeping the queens on. As I said, that's white's big hope, that eventually he can work his way through to the king. And now things start hotting up. Now at this moment, Kamsky was already down to his final few minutes, and Topalov had something like half an hour left. And in such situations, I've seen it so many times before, Topalov is fantastic. He knows how to keep the tension in the position, how to make life very, very difficult for his opponent when they're short of time. I've seen him win so many games from actually very poor positions, but just by keeping things very complicated. So first of all, a3, excellent move. So that pushes black's queen to quite offside on a4. Queen b2. Okay, now we can see that Toppy is lining up the guns on the long diagonal. Good move. Okay, b6. Now, excellent move from Toppy. King h2. We've also seen him play this kind of king move in many of his games before. He just takes a time out from his attack, nudges the king into total safety, and that gives him a free hand to attack, so he never has to worry about queen d1, for example. Okay, rattling on. King f7. Well, an understandable move. Getting the king off the long diagonal. But actually there's a problem. There's a problem, and now the bishop doesn't have this nice square to retreat to. Guess you can't have everything. After queen c3, Kamsky was actually in big trouble, because this bishop is very awkwardly placed. And the queen is, the pieces are rather stepping on each other's toes here. So Kamsky played bishop a2, which may be a forced move, but it's a very awkward position for the bishop. And at this moment, Topi went on to the offensive. He played f5. I think a fantastic move to play when your opponent shorts time. We were looking at all kinds of things. We were looking at e5. I don't think e5 is terribly good, actually, because you can take, and well, I think black should be okay here, actually. Maybe you can even offer a trade here. That's possible. G4 we were looking at is very interesting. Trying to blast things open, but I have to say, once Topalov played f5, I thought it was clear that this was the most dangerous for black, because it sets up all kinds of threats. It weakens the h5 pawn. It sets up nasty threats against the king, because sometimes we have knight e6. All kinds of things going on here. Okay, black played queen c4, desperately trying to trade queens, understandably, and the queen just came back to b2. Well, here, yeah, it's funny, I was thinking that maybe this is a better move for white. I mean, what Topi played kept the tension, but this is an interesting continuation. Black must recapture with the king, otherwise the c6 knight is hanging, and now queen b2, and I was thinking, well, just the king is looking exposed here, and if, for example, knight e5, then the knight can switch round. Maybe black does better to trade and bring the queen back. I mean, I know I can see that, of course, this wins a pawn, but yeah, how good are white's winning chances here when the knight hits here? It's hard to say. Maybe winning chances aren't good. So anyway, I think the way that Topalov played it, quite typically, he kept the tension. Kintoki says, I think the reason why Topi didn't want to do f takes g6 was because it's one extra move closer to the time control. No, I disagree. I think it's because it's a lot of the tension goes out of the position. It's purely on well, pragmatic grounds, actually. Not just pragmatic grounds. This is a very, very difficult position for black to defend with the pawn on f5, and it's easier for black to defend when you take on g6. So no, I don't think it's to do with the time control. It's just a more difficult position for black to play. Okay, so the game continued. Knight e5. And now queen d2. Now this is good stuff, because suddenly we can see another avenue of attack. The queen could land on h6, and that might be absolutely devastating for black. And you can see why Kamsky wanted to close the position with g5. But then came knight e6, and this is absolutely scary, absolutely terrifying for black to play. Imagine you've got a matter of seconds to play 3 more moves, and suddenly your king is under fire. You can't retreat your queen because the bishop is attacked. You've also got to think about that pawn on h5. Sometimes a move like queen d1 even is going to threaten that pawn. You've also got to watch out for bishop d4. So Topi just played played this middle game absolutely beautifully, and particularly this time pressure phase, fantastic. And indeed, Kamsky played an error here, but I think this is almost impossible to play this position. Actually, almost impossible to play correctly when you have no time left. He played knight c6, which, you know, on the surface of it looks like a nice move. It stops bishop d4, but after this, queen d6. And this is a killing move, or it should have been a killing move. Threat of mate on f8. And, well, the only move is king e8, actually. Now let me see, let's just check this. After knight e7, what's black playing? Excuse me, what's white playing? There must be a simple win. Oh yes, if we check and play queen takes, yeah, well, okay, this is simple enough. There may be other moves as well. Okay, he played king e8. Dorian Kusher is saying, all that sounds incredibly beautiful, but tell me how come Topi messed up his potential win? Well, we'll see how he managed to mess things up in a second. It was actually far more complicated than I thought. And if you've... let me tell you, if you've never played in an elite tournament, then maybe you don't understand the kind of pressure these guys are under. You can only play the moves once, you can't take them back. It was still very, very complicated, actually. It was actually far more complicated than I thought at move 40. Okay. Topi, I think, well, from memory, he had something like 5 minutes to play his final move here before the time control. And yeah, I was looking at first I thought that this was winning. But this one isn't so clear because, let me think, I think this is a good move. Yeah, I think this is a good move. So, you know, that one's not so simple again. You know, you can take these, but black suddenly has counterplay on the other side of the board. Of course, you could play here and take this. Again, you have to put up with some counterplay here. The move that Topi played was knight c7 check, and then knight d5, which I thought was winning. And actually, I broke off my live commentary in this point and said, well, see you at the roundup show and we'll see how Topi just finished things off. But unfortunately, he only drew this game. And Kamsky just, well, defended so tenaciously. But if we go back, at this point, in fact, the simplest win here, and this is said with a great deal of hindsight and said with a little assistance from computer software, I should admit, the best move is bishop d4. This is the clearest move. This is the clearest win. It's interesting. After this, actually, black doesn't have very good counterplay. This is a winning move. Basically, white is holding all his threats with the queen and the knight, but he's introducing one more piece into the attack, and this is absolutely fatal. And again, I should say that this was with I was looking at this with the help of some computer software. It's, you know, during a game, it's very, very hard to understand that the other variation isn't winning almost immediately. Okay, let's have a look at some variations. So, for example, well, let's look at some obvious ones. Knight takes bishop. Dorian Kusher saying, what's the point of the bishop? Well, it basically introduces another piece into the attack. That's what the point is. We'll see in a second. Okay, so this fails to mate. Knut Jonsson is saying, I did ask about bishop d4. You did indeed, I remember, Knut. Okay, so that's the obvious variation. The knight can't take the bishop because it's checkmate. Okay, well let's look at, for example, queen d3. Well, here white wins simply by taking some lumps. And yeah, I think this is good enough basically. What we're going to do is we're just going to take some pieces. Mr. Tambourine Man says, and the attack is bishop takes e5. Well, basically, yeah, we're attacking the knight on e5, and black's defense crumbles after this. So, for example, knight f3 check. Okay, we take, and well, here's the clever point. That in this position, we can play knight f8 check, and we simply go a piece up because the queen takes the bishop and defends along the second rank. Very important. So there's no discovered check. What else have we got in this position? Well, let's crack knight takes bishop. How do we win against that one? I imagine. Let me see. What do I imagine? Is this mate? Check. Here. And we could play knight takes knight check. Is that winning? Looks like it should be winning. I'm not quite there yet. Well, if king here, well, we can check here and take that one. And if king up the board, who's going to help me here? This must be winning. How is it winning? Have I blown it already? Probably. Still not so clear. I think I've managed to blow this one. Yep, I think I've blown that. Very good. Okay, let's go back. We've got to find a win here, guys. White to play and win. Where's the win for white? Oh, it was queen c7 mate. Ah. A queen c7, king here. And now what is it? Oh, sorry, now queen e5. Oh, well, that was very, very simple. Okay. Yeah, okay. That's fine. I think we can, once that one goes, we're clear. Okay, good. That clears that one up. So basically this is all over. What else have we got in this position? Okay, let's try h4. Well, h4 just asks the question, what is white threatening? Well, now we'll find out what white is threatening. Okay, we take on e5, and this is basically going to be mate. So queen here, and yeah, this is dreadful. King here, and the queen comes in, and well, for example, well, we can play check and knight e6. I think that should do the job. Any checks down here? Let's hope not. Is this serious? Do I escape? Have I blown it again? Probably. Can we do better than that? We should be able to. Perhaps let's just take a million pawns here first. Okay. Yeah, okay, let's take a million pawns. Alright, this is all over. Okay, we'll go back. So okay, that's basically the threat. We're just going to remove another defender and crash through. So there we go. Bishop d4 looks like the clearest win, but I think it's understandable that Toppy went for this because this looks absolutely crushing. You're taking on f6 with check. Clint Eastwood says 46 knight d5 is mate in 10. Oh, very good. Yeah, I mean there are lots of wins in that variation I just looked at. Okay, so this is the game continuation, and suddenly this position is not so clear. I thought this was winning. When I left this position, I thought this was all over, and I thought there was a win with bishop g1. But in fact, things aren't so clear after taking and taking. And I was only looking at knight e5, which was actually quite an easy win, but knight there is maybe not so clear. Suddenly white has run out of attacking pieces. Let's have a look at the game continuation. Toppy played queen e6, and now he tried king g1, and after this, actually, black is getting close to a draw. In this position, maybe white's best, remarkably, is to go for this endgame and play this. Now I suspect this should be a draw, but white still has chances here. So for example, in this position, and okay, the bishops can sometimes be annoying, but I suspect this is a draw. Maybe we can we march the king into the centre. White is still better, but understandably Toppy wanted to keep going. But now I think this is actually a forced draw. It's incredible, and I think fantastic defence from Kamsky. Okay, we can see that the knight on e5 is taboo because of the fork on f3. And here you can pick up loads of pawns, but it's not doing you much good. Kintoki says that the Silicon Beast gave me a winning line with queen h8. In which position, Kintoki? I mean, there was a position back here where queen h8 was certainly possible. I think, yeah, I mean, I looked at this, something like this. Let me flash through these moves. I mean, I looked at this earlier, and there might be a win here somewhere. That's right, this one. And now knight d7. I mean, this is hideously complicated. You know, you've reached move 40, you think you've got a winning position, and suddenly it seems a little bit unclear. You've got a whole range of checks to choose from. Everything starts swirling around your head. I tell you folks, I've been there. It's tricky. Yeah, maybe this is winning. I mean, it's complicated though. Let's have a look at the game continuation. So it was this and knight d4, and now this. I think this is already drawing for black, even though you can take some pawns. And now here's a really important move: queen c2, covering c7. So suddenly, actually, black's king has found relative safety. Der Eagle says it's hard to see for a human. Absolutely. And Magnus Kandinsky is saying the knights temporarily dominate the bishops. They do, yeah. Suddenly these bishops don't look so special. And what's interesting is that actually black's king has some cover. You know, these critical squares are actually covered. So it's difficult for white's queen to bounce back to defend his own king. Very interesting. And in fact, well, this position is now a draw. It's curious. When I was looking at this earlier, I was thinking, what moves does white actually have here? It's a curious case where that queen is actually dominated. For example, well, it can't move to any of these squares, obviously. It can't move back to g5 because of the fork. Likewise, h4. It's actually running very short of squares. Also, you know, white is very short of moves. What else can you play? You can hardly move these pieces either. It's almost a case of Zugzwang, actually. And if bishop takes knight, then, well, that's mate. So, bishop g2 was the game continuation, but black draws in this way. Queen c2. Again, you can't take on d4. And knight f3 check, and that will win. Okay, let's go back. Sorry, this is the game continuation. Check, bishop g1, and now white has to take care, actually. So, okay, in this position, Topalov forced a draw with bishop f2. So after takes, now it's a draw by perpetual check. The black king really can't escape this. So they agreed a draw here. Fantastic save from Kamsky. Really tenacious defense. So Kamsky, on drawing this game, goes through to the next round. So in the next round we will see, let me just see the scores on the doors. We're going to see Kamsky against Gelfand in the semi-finals, and well, we'll see tomorrow after the tie breaks who will come through. Will it be Aronian or Grischuk, or Kramnik against Redyarbov? I think Kramnik is the big favourite against Redyarbov, and I would still say Aronian is the favourite against Grischuk. He seems to be on very, very good form at the moment. So all to play for, and a very tense day. Rapid play tiebreak games start at normal time tomorrow. I don't know if there's live commentary tomorrow. Just check out the site, and hopefully there is anyway. Okay, folks, I think I'm going to leave it there. It was very, very exciting day, and fantastic play from both players. Okay, all the best. Thanks for tuning in, and see you soon.